When we think about Greek warfare, our minds usually jump straight to Spartans, with their helmets and shields, or maybe those powerful Athenian ships. But honestly, that's just a tiny, tiny piece of the puzzle. We're about to dive into a story of conflict that spans 3,000 years. A saga that didn't just defend a nation, but actually helped forge the very idea of the West. So the big question is, where do you even begin with a story this epic?
Right? It's a huge undertaking. How do you possibly make sense of that much time, that much war? Well, the trick is you look for the patterns. And we found that you can break this entire history down into 4 distinct ages, which gives us a kind of roadmap to follow.
And here it is. This is our map for today. We're going to start way back in the age of myths and legends, with rival city-states battling for glory. Then we'll watch as the scale explodes into massive, continent-spanning empires. From there, we'll jump to the brutal, modern fight to create a new nation from the ashes. And finally, we'll look at Greece's totally transformed role on the world stage today. All right, so those are our 4 big chapters. Let's dive right in with the myths, the rivalries, and the pride that started it all. Okay, so our story kicks off in the Bronze Age. This is a time when history and myth are basically one and the same, and it's where the very idea of what it means to be a Greek warrior was first hammered into shape.
Yeah, before anyone was really writing formal history, there was Homer and the story of the Trojan War. Now, this wasn't just some fantasy tale. For the Greeks, it was the absolute blueprint for a warrior. It laid out all the core values, honor, glory, and yeah, the tragic, heavy cost of war. Those ideas would echo for literally thousands of years.
And then, that mythic world slammed into a world-changing reality. When the massive Persian Empire invaded, something amazing happened. All these fiercely independent city-states, like Athens and Sparta, who were usually at each other's throats, they actually united. They put aside their differences to fight a common enemy. And battles like Marathon and Thermopylae became these epic stories of freedom versus tyranny, creating this powerful, even if it was short-lived, sense of Greek identity.
But that unity was never going to last. It's almost tragic. As soon as the foreign threat was gone, the Greeks turned right back on each other. The Peloponnesian War was essentially a decades-long Greek civil war. You had Athens and its naval empire against Sparta and its unstoppable army on land. In the end, it was a total catastrophe that just shattered the Greek world, leaving everyone exhausted and, more importantly, totally vulnerable to a new power that was quietly rising up in the north.
And that vulnerability perfectly sets the stage for our second age. The scale of war is about to get a whole lot bigger. We're moving from small-scale battles between cities to the conquest of entire continents, and then to the 1,000-year defense of a legendary empire.
And rising from that fractured Greek world comes Alexander the Great. I mean, think about it. In just over a decade, this guy marches his army from Greece to the edge of India. He completely redrew the map. His conquests created this new Hellenistic civilization, which was this incredible fusion of Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Indian cultures. History was never the same again.
Okay, so fast forward a bit. Alexander's empire eventually breaks apart, and then Rome rises and falls. Well, sort of. The center of gravity for the Roman world shifts east, to the Greek-speaking half. This becomes the Byzantine Empire. And it wasn't just a leftover piece of Rome. It was its own powerful entity, a fortress of Christianity and Greek culture that would spend the next 1,000 years in a state of near-constant war just to survive. And just try to wrap your head around that level of endurance. The Byzantines were getting hit from every single direction. Persians, Arabs, Slavs, even Western European crusaders, and finally the Ottoman Turks. Their story is just one of incredible resilience. For a millennium, they acted as a shield for a still-developing Europe. But as we know, no fortress can stand forever. In 1453, the unthinkable happened. The massive walls of Constantinople were finally breached by the Ottoman Empire. And this wasn't just the fall of a city, it was the end of an entire era. The last living remnant of the Roman and Greek imperial age was gone.
So for almost 400 years after that, Greece was part of the Ottoman Empire. But an idea is a hard thing to kill, and the idea of Greece never really went away. And that brings us to our third age, an age defined by one of the most powerful forces in all of modern history, the struggle for national independence.
Then, in 1821, revolution exploded across the land. It was this brutal, heroic, and often desperate war that really captured the world's attention. After over a decade of bloody fighting, and with a lot of help from Britain, France, and Russia, a small, independent Greek kingdom was finally born. But the fight was far, far from over.
Seriously, winning independence was just step one. The next 120 years were just this relentless storm of conflict to figure out what the new nation's borders would be and really what its soul was. There were triumphant moments, like the huge expansion of territory in the Balkan Wars, but there was also absolute catastrophe, like the devastating war in Anatolia. There was heroic resistance against the Axis in World War II, followed immediately by the tragedy of a brutal civil war that tore the country apart. It was an incredibly turbulent century.
But then, coming out of the ashes of World War II and that horrible civil war, something really fundamental changed. The entire nature of Greek warfare began to transform, shifting away from this constant fight for national survival to something entirely new.
And that turning point, strangely enough, happened half a world away in Korea. For the first time in their entire history, Greek soldiers were sent to fight not for their own borders, not for their own land, but under the flag of the United Nations as part of an international coalition. This was the beginning of our fourth and final age.
And this slide just lays out that shift so clearly. Look at the left side. It's thousands of years of conquest, of national defense, of wars for independence, all about survival and expansion. Now look at the right. Peacekeeping, coalition operations with NATO, humanitarian support, maritime security. It is a completely different mission, a truly profound transformation.
I mean, just look at the scope of these recent missions. You've got peacekeeping right in their own backyard in the Balkans, but then also security missions all the way in Afghanistan. You have naval patrols off the coast of Lebanon and even counter-piracy operations off the Horn of Africa. The modern Greek military is operating all over the globe, playing a part in a world order that extends far beyond its own shore.
So all of this brings us to one final question. After 3,000 years of shaping, defending, and fighting for its own world, what does it mean to be a warrior nation in a world that now asks you to keep the peace for other people? It's a really remarkable evolution when you think about it. It's a direct line that you can trace from Achilles at the gates of Troy to a modern UN peacekeeper serving in Kosovo. What a journey.